Hey, DIY Derek here in my electrical safety boots, just putting the final touches to this socket that I've just installed. And what do you do next when you've installed a socket? Well, of course, you just get up, pay no further attention at all, wander over to your consumer unit, also known in the United States as a breaker box, and without any thought of testing or anything else, you simply come and, of course, turn the circuit on. Whereas that was clearly an over-dramatization of what can go wrong if you don't thoroughly test your electrics before you attempt to turn them on, it is absolutely true that every year a lot of people die because electrics are not properly designed and not properly tested before they're commissioned. So the purpose of this video is to give you some appreciation of what's involved in properly testing a circuit before you set it live. So let's dive in and see what's involved. So for our testing today, we'll be using a small consumer unit already locked off and isolated. If you want to find out how to do that, I've got a separate video on that topic. And the thing we're going to be testing too is something called a fused connection unit here, very typical when installing a piece of equipment, in this case a boiler. So that's what we're going to be testing, and let's do it step by step. So step one is to test that the wires that connect from the circuit breaker here to the fused connection unit have complete integrity, they have continuity. So to do that, obviously, firstly, we need to be completely locked off and isolated for safety. And then what we're going to do is disconnect the cable here, and this is what we call in the electrician trade R1, resistance 1 for the line conductor. And we want to test the continuity between that and the CPC, which is otherwise known as ground or earth, the circuit protective conductor, which is this guy here. So we can either plug the line straight into the earth terminal. I always find that's a bit weird. It's fine to do it, but if there was some strange wiring somewhere else, you could get yourself in trouble. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect these two together. There's lots of ways to do that. One way would just be to use some testing clips. All right, so what I've done there is I've connected the line conductor with the circuit protective conductor. Now that means that even if this was a long, long way away, I can create a complete loop of wire using existing wires that are already here, which is really convenient. And now I can use that to do my continuity test. So here is my multi-function tester. This is the big chunky electronics device you see electricians carry around with them. It's as big and heavy as it is for lots of reasons, which I'll go into, I think, in another video for you. So I get this on the continuity setting. This is a simple resistance meter. If my probes were connected together, then I would get a resistance reading of 0. And that's roughly what we want to see on such a short run of wires here. You may also hear a beep from the tester. All right, so what I need to do is find the incoming wires, really important. So this is this brown wire here, and in this particular case, the earth wire or the CPC. So I'm going to connect between these two, like so, and I'm going to see what resistance I get. Now, the beeping you hear means there is continuity. Those wires are connected. There is a complete loop between the line conductor and the earth or CPC, and the reading I got was 0.01 ohms. Now, you would check that against a table of standard resistance values to make sure that that is a sensible figure for the length of cables. And if you've done that, then you know you've got cables, you know that they're connected, and you know that they are probably operating okay from a resistance point of view because their values match your expectations. So that's it. Step one, it's the continuity of the conductors. And on a simple, what's called a radial circuit like this is all we need to do. With ring circuits we have in the UK, it's much more complicated. But for a radial circuit, that's all we need to do at this stage. All right, moving on to the next step. So we have determined that at least these two wires, the neutral gets checked in some of the later checks, are connected and they have resistances that we would expect. Now, one of the reasons these chunky meters are so chunky is because they can generate test voltages and put them down these wires. So what we're going to check next is insulation resistance. It's going to make sure that these sheaths between these wires here, these PVC sheaths, are actually perfectly intact all the way down, and there is no contact between the wires, because that would be a short circuit. That could cause arcing, that could cause all sorts of problems. So this next test is something called an insulation resistance test. All right, so first thing I'm going to do before we do an insulation resistance test is I'm going to get this CPC back in the bar here, because remember, I said this test is going to be putting a test voltage, in this case it's going to be 500 volts DC test voltage, into the wires, and we want to make sure that we don't have anything anywhere in the installation with 500 volts on it, even though it's only a little tiny energy pulse that realistically won't hurt anybody. It just gives you like a static shock. This is still the best practice. Now we've got 3 sets of insulation resistance tests to do. It's a bit like when we check things are dead, we check between all three possibilities. Imagine my three conductors laid out in a triangle. The blue one, the brown one, and the yellow and green one. And you can imagine that there are three sides to that triangle, therefore three combinations that we need to test. So you need a special device for this. This is why we leave this job to electricians. The other thing you need, even if you rented one of these devices, is of course it's hard to rent the knowledge. That's called hiring an electrician, right? There's a lot of background knowledge going into what tests we do in what order and why, and particularly what you need to do if you find a curveball. All right, so this is set up now for insulation resistance testing. When I put these crocodile clips together, there is actually, not going to see it, but there's a tiny little spark, which is always fun, okay, because it's putting 500 volts between these clips. As I say, it's low energy, so I'm not putting myself at great risk here by doing this. So what I do is I want to do the tests on all the possible combinations. So I can come to the earth, or the CPC, to neutral, and I see I have more than 1 billion ohms of resistance. So the insulation between those two is good. Between the CPC and the line conductor, I have also more than 1 billion ohms. And then when I come between line and neutral, which is the third possibility, also more than 1 billion ohms. I'll just show you the screen of that just for fun. You can see what I mean by that. It says greater than 999 mega ohms, greater than 999 million ohms. That's it. That is the insulation resistance test done, confirming that the insulators are doing their job. This is really important. This makes sure that we don't get arcing. It also makes sure that we're not going to get things like a ground fault where you have current leaking to ground, and then RCDs or GFCIs in the States, ground fault circuit interrupters, tripping out in an annoying way. So really important test, insulation resistance. Glad it's done. All right, so next test, we need to know that the switch is actually switching the right thing. Now, you may think you've plugged it into the right terminals on here, incoming and outgoing in the right place, but it is important that when we turn something off, that we break the circuit on the line side, not the neutral side. If we break a circuit on the neutral side, it's after the load, right? So the power goes out to the boiler, and then you break the circuit on the way back. Yes, it'll stop the thing functioning, but the problem is you've still got a line conductor going to this big metal boiler. Not safe. We need to break the line conductor before the load. All right, so I need a continuity meter, which I could use my big one, but I'm just giving my neck a rest for a minute. So this dude here beeps when there is continuity. I've put my cables back in, and of course, whenever you put something back in, you tug test it. Please don't mess around in consumer units as a DIYer. The basic rule as a DIYer, certainly in the UK, is just don't take the front off your consumer unit in the first place, and don't try and install circuits in places like swimming pools or bathrooms, which are called special locations, or just don't try and install new circuits, full stop, is the basic one. Avoid outdoors, wet places, and have taken the front off your consumer unit, and you'll be all good. But I need to do this test with the front off. So what I'm doing is I'm coming to the output there, and then I'm going to just probe on the input just to check things. There you go. We get a beep, and if I come to the output, I get nothing. Now, if I'm to toggle the switch and go to the output, now I get continuity. So what that tells me is that this switch is switching the line conductor, which is what I want. All right, cool. That's polarity in terms of switching. We'll see another polarity in a minute, by the way. All right, so we've completed the dead test. We've checked the continuity of the conductors, we've checked their insulation resistance, and we've checked that when we switch the switch, that we are breaking the line conductor. That's that type of polarity. Now here's another type of polarity. This is called the live polarity. So coming into this board, we have three major things. We have the CPC or earth supply coming in here from this thickest cable. This is a protective conductor that makes sure that if there is an earth fault, the current goes through this wire, not through a human being. We have the neutral, which is the 0 volt reference point for the circuit. It's basically at the same potential as neutral in my particular earthing arrangement. Another thing electricians need to consider is what's your earthing arrangement, but we're not going into that in this video. So that's your neutral point, right? And then you have your line conductor coming in here. This big brown puppy there. Now that it's AC, alternating current, whether it's 110, 120, 240, 230, whatever, you're getting an oscillation around the 0 voltage point, the neutral. So the neutral provides a reference point, and then you get up and down. That's what alternating current means. So it goes positive, negative, positive, negative. So what does it mean to check the polarity of this? I can't just put a meter with a plus and minus probe on my line and neutral because it goes plus minus, plus minus, plus minus, in our case 50 times a second, over in the US more like 60. So we still, though, can check that the right things are correct. Now, let me just show you how. So if we were to go between the ground or earth or CPC and the neutral, you would expect no voltage, and there's no stack of lights here, and you might have continuity for reasons to do with your earthing arrangement I won't bore you with now. So this is what I want to see. There's no voltage between neutral and earth. Yeah, they should be at about the same voltage. Right. Now, if I go between earth and line, I should see a stack of voltage lights. You see that stack of lights light up there? And that's going up to 230. So that is showing that between earth and line, you're getting 230 volts. That's what you'd expect. This is the one you don't want to touch. And the final check is when you go from line to neutral, like so, you should also see 230 volts. Now, if all three of those tests come out as you'd expect, then you know that these things are correct, right? Because just because this is a blue cable and this is brown or whatever the colors are in your country, doesn't mean somebody's connected it properly the other end. So we're here, this is our focus, this is a sub board, there are other boards upstream, but we're focused on this, and now we know that these cables are the voltages that we would expect them to be, and they're identified correctly. So that's that. That is something called live polarity. Lets us move on to the next test. This is when things get a little bit more hairy and where these 3-lead electricians multimeters really start to come into their own. What I need to test now is something called the ZE. Z stands for impedance, a bit like resistance, but more complicated. And E stands for external. So we're looking at the resistance between the earth that's coming in here from the outside to this board and the line conductor that's coming in from the outside. We want to know what the resistance of that entire loop back to the transformer outside, or wherever this goes upstream. Let's not worry ourselves about it too much. But the important is that the resistance is low enough that in a fault condition where current starts trying to flow down this circuit protective conductor, that enough current can flow down that to trip out the residual current device. Because if the resistance of that loop is too high, there's no way you can get enough current through your GFCI, your ground fault circuit interrupter, or your RCD residual current device for it to actually trip. This one needs 30 milliamps to trip. So we're going to check that now. All right. Now I'm just going to show you how that gets checked. We need to, and we rarely do this, but we're going to disconnect our main earthing conductor because this entire board is isolated. So everything here is powered off, right? So this is the only time we're going to disconnect this. We're also not going to disconnect it for any longer than we need to. So we disconnect that main earthing conductor like that. I get a probe lead on that. This is a 3-lead test, why we need the specialist equipment. I get into something called an earth fault loop impedance mode on my tester. And what I'm going to do is come onto it. And my meter is going to detect that there's voltage there. And with any luck, it'll give me a reading. There you go, 0.27 ohms. Now, this is where you need to know something about the earthing arrangement and the regulations, etc., etc. But that's a pass for us, basically. There is little enough resistance that current can freely flow in the case of a fault and trip out the GFCI or the RCD. Cool. At the end of this test, the thing that I need to do, really important, is get this main earthing conductor back in straight away, because clearly we don't want to leave an installation without an intact earth. So let me get that puppy screwed up and tug tested before we do anything else. Okay, on to the next one. So for this fault current test, we're going to get this 3 leads set up as before. The meter, we're going to ask it to tell us a PFC, the prospective fault current. It's going to estimate how much current would flow in a condition where the line and the neutral accidentally became conducted together, known as a short circuit. And if we look on the meter here, it says 777 amps, or rounded down 0.78 kiloamps. Okay, or rounded up, but there's a number of significant figures reduced, should I say. So that's little less than 1,000 amps, well within the 6,000 that these breakers can handle. That's all good. Now we finished the live testing, we can put the board cover back on, close all this up, and do the rest of our testing in a safer way. All right, now we want to test the GFCI or residual current device. One way to do that, and you should do this, I would say, every 6 months to a year, is to be prepared for the ensuing power cut and just hit the test button. Dunk. You hear the dunk, it puts a fault current in, turns off, all good. That is a gross or a basic test, but we need to know more precisely that it's tripping at the right current, not too eagerly, which will cause nuisance tripping, and not too tardily, if you like, which would cause insufficient protection against electric shock. So when your electrician's doing this, they need to be making sure they don't liven something like this with a front cover open up when they're not present to protect it against you coming in and touching it. But in this case, I'm in control of this area. So I'm going to turn the RCD and the circuit in question on. Then on my meter, I need to tell it various different things now. I need to be telling this meter what test current I want to use, which in this case is a half. It's 15 milliamps. It's half the current it should be tripping at. I want to tell it that it's a 30 milliamp rated RCD. I want to tell it that it's type AC. They've got little symbols on them, different types. And then we also test this at different phases. But you know what? For simplicity, I'm going to leave that out. Let's just do the basics. So here what I'm testing for is I'm putting half of the rated fault current through this circuit now, and this should not trip, and it checks for at least 2 seconds, and by the end we get something saying, hey, I tested at half the current, 15 milliamps for 2 seconds, and it didn't trip. Awesome. So now what I do is I tell my meter, okay, I'm now going to test at a full 1 times. Okay, now it's going to put 30 milliamps of fault current in here, and when it does so, we would expect this RCD to trip. And it's not only going to check that it trips, it's going to check how fast it trips. So you heard it trip, clunk there, and then it tells me that that happened within 26 milliseconds. Now that's well within our regulation times here, but to know what the time should be, you need to know how to look it up in the regulation book, which is a chunky book, so that's no mean feat. Now I would actually repeat this test a couple of times at something called a different phase, but for simplicity, we'll just show you there's an overview of testing an RCD with a proper testing meter to make sure that it works. And that will apply in this particular case to all of these circuits on this board because this one RCD protects all of these different circuits. You might need to repeat that test for every single circuit depending on what's going on. So RCD check, done. Okay, one more test I want to talk about, but I'm not actually going to perform because I know it's not going to work on here with this particular setup and some faults that we have. And that's ZS. That is the system impedance, right? Not just the external. So remember, we measured the resistance of the loop between the line and the CPC to the board. Remember, we did that test. That's all very well, but we also need to know what the circumstance is right down the end here. It's also about making sure that protective device tripping out. Now, in theory, the ZE, the external impedance to here, plus the resistance that we measured up to this fuse connection unit, we call it R1 plus R2, if you add those together, in theory, you get this system impedance, ZS. Now you can do it by calculation, that is valid. I much prefer to measure it every time. It's a double check against these other figures that everything tallies together, that the external resistance plus the internal resistance add together to give the system impedance at the end. So it can be done by measurement, it can be done by calculation. In this case, I'm going to do it by calculation, but it can be measured on the multifunction testers, and in circumstances where it's easy and safe to measure that, and where there's sufficiently low noise on the circuit that you can get a reading, that's what you would do if you were really trying to do things properly. So that is ZS, and that is, again, to make sure that your protective devices are actually going to work once you've added in the extra resistance between the consumer unit and the thing that's hanging off the end of it, like this FCU. All right, and finally, we're on the very home run, well, we're at the end, functional testing. So we've tested all the things that we need to test for this particular circumstance. The final job is to turn it on and make sure it works. So I've turned it on, and the screen has lit up on my boiler over there, so I am confident it is working. That's called functional testing. You can also use the socket front testers that you'll have seen in some of my other videos with their little lights. Note, by the way, that those socket front testers with their little lights are the very last step of testing in a professional testing scenario like this. You don't, as a DIY, wire it all up, plug that in and go, oh yeah, it works, mate. It's the last thing you check. I'm not saying don't check that, but it is the last thing you check. The whirring you might hear is the boiler in the background. All is good. Thank you very much for watching up to this point. Well, I certainly hope you found that video helpful. It was good fun making it for you. Now, the whole point of the video is to give you an appreciation of what's involved in testing. If you're a DIYer, then maybe this will give you an idea of just how much you don't know, so you maybe get an electrician in. If you're a homeowner, this will help you spot a good electrician when you see one. And if you're a budding electrician, then excuse me for all the little bits I skipped in that video. It's designed to be a rapid overview for people who want to know roughly what's involved. If you would like to see more testing, well, firstly, subscribe for future videos. But specifically, I've got this video for you, which is where my plumbing is on fire in the very same shed. Yes, my plumbing is on fire, and I use the tester with some other add-ons to work out what's going on.